Our life prayers awaken the spirit who formed creation in every disguise. Dust, friction, the need to experience created the power of the first orgasm of energy across infinite skies. Light, energy, movement, sound through infinite time, space. The universe we've come to grace, the great mystery. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is FallenAngels.tv, and it's a Saturday Sabbath broadcast, and I thank you for taking the time to join me in fellowship and to spend this moment of church with me as we honor the Creator and the Son and the Holy Spirit and regard them in worship and prayerful celebration of life and existence and coming together to share the information that we've all been blessed to come to discernment on. It's another glorious day here upon the planet. In Georgia, it was near almost 70 degrees, I think, upper mid 60s, and just beautiful, calm, blue skies, the gentle zephyrs, and just a glorious day. And I spent the majority of it outside, just in being with the Creator and the creation, and just feeling the warmth of the sunbeams touching me in gentle kindness. There's nothing like, in my opinion, and just being with the giant family. Today is a follow-up. It will be the second in the series on the book of Atam and Eua. And for those that missed the first show, this book is one that was sent to me by a friend of mine, a listener in Bulgaria, who is a researcher in the Thracian mysteries and the culture, the civilization, because they were based in that area, and they are the mother culture of that particular region. And so, in being interested in the ancient mysteries and the ancient past, he became a seeker of knowledge and was introduced to a Dr. Stephen Guide, who has published a number of books which are bilingual, and I'm hoping to get copies of these. I'm not found a website that is in English to where I can actually order them, but he's also translated some ancient texts that were found within that region from this Thracian culture, which predates. A lot of you have heard about the Thracians, which they predated the Sumerians by some 1,000 to 2,000 years. And what is interesting about the knowledge that they have and the information that Dr. Guide shares with us as a world is that they were not pagans, but they were very much Christian oriented and were followers of the Most High and knowers of the Son, and knew about what would be his later coming into the flesh to die on the cross to then redeem the sins of humanity, and that the promise, there was a prophecy within their culture, of which we've also been reading from in this particular text, that speaks about how the Father would send the Son into flesh form, and that taking on and being incarnated in such a way that he would, in fact, through his life and his example, show to us basically the way home, and that he would be the way and the truth and the light, and that he would defeat death in order to redeem humanity. And so all of these things are found within this particular text. And over the next few weeks, because so many of you are interested in it and it's not available, I'm going to share it with you so that you can be blessed by the information that is found within the context of and the scope of it as a work. And so I've decided to actually dedicate the time to bring it to you in full revelation, whereas a lot of times in the shows that I do on some of these ancient documents, I will just spend one or two shows in order to emphasize what I feel are the most relevant parts, and then allow you to, share with you the link, and then allow you to read and to study the text for yourself. But because it's not available to you, I think it would be important to cover it if not in its entirety, in most of it. And so that's what we're going to do. But before I continue, hold on, we've got a couple questions. Okay, a couple questions from the chat room, people that are hitting me up on instant message, and I will get to that. People that are asking me questions, but also know if you are disrupting the show, that I will not have a problem booting anybody. So please be cordial and to respect and to honor each other in the chat room. With me not being able to focus entirely, I don't want to have to completely monitor. And so if there is somebody that's disrupting, please let me know. All right. All right. Yeah, we had somebody that was disrupting, so I don't want to spend time dealing with that, and so I just booted that individual. But anyways, I'm going to answer a few questions. First, let me answer this instant message from Exit Babylon. He's asking me a question, what is going on with Dr. Joy? Oh, I did answer you, Exit Babylon, but you may not have gotten my message, but I did let you know that Dr. Joy's husband has been going through some difficult times as far as his health, and so they're not exactly sure what his condition is, and so she's been going to a number of specialists and has had to focus on taking care of her husband and has not been able to do a lot of shows. She is going to be joining me November 29th on Revolution Radio on a Wednesday evening, 8 to 10 p.m. And we'll be covering a lot of information, and you're welcome to join us there. If you have any questions, you can ask her directly, or you can email me at zengarcia.com, and I'll be glad to pass those on to her. And also, you can contact her directly. She is taking some time to get back to people because of all that's going on with her life, but she makes it a point to answer everybody that does try to contact her. She's very good about that, and you can so just email her at drjoye, drjoye.com. And she'll she'll catch you up on what's going on with her. But definitely, please do pray for her and her husband, and I hope that life stabilizes for them so that she can continue to bless the world with all her incredible research. Because as for those that do know and have followed the relationship that she and I have had for a long number of years now, she was the first person that was confirming witness to me as to the revelation of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, and that she also was led in discernment in that way, and writes about it and has covered it in great, and also in on the various programs and the things that she's written about. In fact, the third book of her Beguiled series, of which we will be covering on November 29th, is focused on the metaphor of the symbology of the garden parable and Eve having eaten from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and how the consequences of her having eaten of that fruit do not make sense unless you understand that the metaphor for the garden parable, that there's a sexual connotation associated to that revelation. And I'm sure she'll talk about that, but for those that are interested in this information, that were, wanting more than even what I cover in my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, certainly read her third book on the Beguiled series, the new Beguiled series, because there's a lot of incredible information in that which also reflects the same knowledge and discernment that she and I share on that particular text. Also, for those that are interested, I do have the second editions of Lucifer, Father of Cain available, and I am making them available to you at a discount cost, which they usually sell for $25, and that's autographed. I have, for the time going leading up to Christmas, and would even probably carry this on through January until the new year, that I'm making autographed copies of them available to you for $15 a piece, or if you order more than 10, that I will then lower the cost to $10 each in autographs, so that you can, give them out to your friends, to your loved ones, your family members, your children, parents, and share this revelation in a way that would bless their lives and help them to understand the gospel unlike they probably have ever had chance to prior. Because in my opinion, this information is absolutely important for understanding what Christ referred to as secrets hidden since the foundation of the world. And that once you have discernment on the two bloodlines and the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, certainly all the other things fall into place. What was the difference, and why was there this ongoing battle between, even with Cain and Abel, Jacob and Esau, Isaac and Ishmael, David and Goliath. All these things are connected to this as revelation, and also why it is that this war and this battle would be ongoing until the second coming of Christ, and where the harvest will ensue, and then we will have the separation of the wheat and the tares. And that also leads me to one other, a couple questions that some people had asked me. If first off, Sea Tiger, you'd been asking me about the Fritz Springmeier interview that I did. So if you go to my Facebook page, I'd linked the Fritz Springmeier, The Bloodlines of the Illuminati interview that I did with him. And also know that I am going to start making the archives for the Revolution Radio broadcast available to you. It won't be immediately after the show or anything of that nature, but I will start to make some of those archives available. I had no idea that they were archiving the shows. And for those that are interested, you can go to freedomslips.com, go down on the page. There's an archive section, and you can gain access to not only my archives going back to the beginning of the year, which I believe they keep them for 1 year and then they start it over again, but all the other hosts, which there are 70 plus hosts on Revolution Radio coming to you 24/7, 7 days a week just about. There are a few time slots that are not filled, but and you gain access to all of the archives for those shows as well. And that's at just $4.95 a month, which, in my opinion, for the amount of information, is a really good deal. So, all right, want to answer a couple questions. First, from Mark Irvin, he had asked me about the Pistis Sophia collection and whether I thought this particular ancient text was authentic or inspired by biblical facts. It is a text that has a Gnostic leaning, and for a lot of people that is tantamount to it's not being relevant, or that it's contrary to what we find in the foundation of the canon, the Old and the New Testament. But it's my opinion that the things that are written about, and even in the other Gnostic, the Nag Hammadi collection, are little understood. And so that people that don't even understand the canon cannot make sense of what I consider to be the advanced and deeper secrets that are being revealed through those particular codices. And the reason I say that is because if you're not familiar, both the Pistis Sophia and the Nag Hammadi collection, these are texts that were dialogues between the apostles and Christ after his resurrection from the cross. And for the time that he was here with them prior to his ascent to the right hand of the Father. That, and this is also, it speaks about this in some of the texts, that he's not going to speak to them in parable form anymore, but that he was going to reveal the information in a very candid and straightforward kind of way. And some of those teachings are very profound, and because most people don't read their Bibles and they don't even understand the basics, have no foundation for truth, they can't make sense, heads or tails, as to what the more advanced texts are talking about. And that the Pistis Sophia speaks about pre-existence and elaborates upon how the Father and the Son knew us before we entered into the wombs of our mothers. Like in Jeremiah, where he says, I have foreordained you to be a prophet unto the nations. That in the Pistis Sophia talks about how the 12 apostles were known and that they were chosen, that they were to be part of the elect for their incarnation into flesh, and that this kind of thing applies to many, even to those that are alive in this generation, with our being the final generation. And I would even consider many of you as part of that group, because to you, um, the secrets have been revealed, and you are the keepers of wisdom. You are the carriers of ancient metaphor, as I say in some of my poems. And so you are going to be that generation that is going to be able to, or that group of individuals that will truly be able to help others to come to discernment and to give them guidance and direction on truth when so many others just simply cannot. And so that was the first question. Second question, I forget exactly who sent me this, but the question is from a mother and her son. She says, blessed day to you. Thank you for helping me understand the truth. You've been so gracious to answer a couple of questions for me in the past, and I have a couple of more if you have time. From my son Isaac, and this is relevant to what we were just talking about, and then I'll go into the text because I know that time will quickly pass. Do you know why God didn't put Cain to death before he was able to spread his seed for so many generations? And I think that's just an awesome question, especially for a young person. For an individual to even have discernment on the two seed lines is such a true blessing in that way. But anyways, it's the same reason that the Most High God, the Father and the Son, allowed Satan to continue with his rebellion, with the insurrection and the war in heaven, and his temptation of 1/3 of the angels. It's because the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent would be allowed continuance from what was our first estate when the war in heaven occurred, and Lucifer and the rebel angels were cast out and banished here to this earth, and then his beguilement of Eve, impregnating her with Cain, and then Cain being the firstborn son, the firstborn scion of the serpent, and how he would be the patriarch, for which would be the progeny of the devil's children here upon the planet. All that would be allowed continuance, even with the flood of Noah's day. That Og and the giants and the seed of the serpent would be allowed to make it through the flood. Of course, it was minimized in that the seed of humanity and the seed of the woman was given opportunity to flourish once again without being decimated by the giants that were on the planet before and after the flood. But that judgment would be levied by Christ in his second coming. That's what the whole parable of the Matthew chapter 13, the parable of the wheat and the tares, is about, where he said, the parable of the sower, when he said, whence from did these tares come about? And he said that an enemy had sowed them. And then when the angels asked, should we eradicate them now? He said, no, let them both grow up together until the time of the end. And then you have the parable of the wheat and the tares, when the multitudes are sent away, and he says that the enemy that sowed the tares is the devil, and that the time of the end, the angels as reapers would be sent out, and the tares would be gathered for burning, and that the wheat would be gathered for the barn. All of that where every knee shall bow and every tongue confess, that enmity, the war between the bloodlines, all of that, they would be allowed continuance until Christ comes again. Because they are also being granted opportunity, just as we are, to redetermine allegiance to and to follow the commandments and to follow Christ. And, the elect will be a minority, because most will reject him and will reject the knowledge of the gospel. and the secrets of the teachings that are contained within them. All right, one other question. The other question from the mother, and I don't, you can't recall who you are right now, was the Tower of Babel built by the fallen angels and the Rephaim to avoid the flood? And this would be, quickly, the answer to that is no. And the reason this is so is because the flood of Noah's day is written about and occurs after the interdiction of the watchers into the affairs of humanity, which occurs in Genesis chapter 6. And then the flood, the Tower of Babel, was under the commandment of Nimrod, which was born of the line of Ham, the children of Canaan, and that you can find detail of that in Genesis chapter 11, and that that occurred after the generations and the children of Noah had been multiplying and repopulating upon the planet. And so, quickly, the answer to that is no. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and check the chat room real quick. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get to the book of Atam and Eua. Miss W says no one wants to be known as the devil's children, but contrary to that would be true for the seed of Adam and for the seed of the woman. I mean, we would never want any kind of association to the devil and to his bloodline, to his seed line. But those that are born of those lineages, that are proud of their being descendants of the fallen angels and of their father the devil, they relish in such knowledge, and they are proud of their divine right to rule over the masses of humanity. They are proud of their associations, and that's why it is that, like the bloodlines, the Bush family, the Clintons, and all those that are part of the royal elite that have New World Order, Illuminati connections, why it is that they are bound in blood oath and duty to the New World Order as agenda. It's, they are proud of they consider themselves to be the elect, the chosen ones. And the rest of us, they see as useless eaters. And so, all right, continuing. We stopped off at chapter 9. The book of Atam and Eua. Again, this is a Thracian text that goes 5500 to 7000 BC. But Atam and Eua still cried because they had to leave the garden, their first home. And truly, when Adam looked at his body, which was now changed, he and Eua cried bitterly for what they have done. And after they left the Garden of Eden, they walked slowly till they came to the cave of the treasures. And when they came to the cave, Adam cried for himself and said to Eua, "Look at this cave, it will be our prison in this world and a place for punishment. What is it compared to the garden? Can its tightness be compared to that expansive place of the garden? What is this rock compared to those little hills? Or what is the darkness in the cave compared to the light in the garden? What is this hanging ceiling in the cave compared to the mercy of God which was before our ceiling and our guard? What is the earth of this cave compared to the earth of the garden? This earth is covered with stones, but the earth of the garden is planted with wonderful and fruitful trees. And Adam said to Eua, now look at our eyes, which before could see how the angels praise God constantly in the heavens, as we praised him with songs and hymns together with the angels. But now we cannot see like we used to see before. Our eyes turn carnal. They cannot see any more in the same way. I want to make a comment here. This particular book, this particular text, as does the first book of Adam and Eve, part of the forbidden books of the Bible, the forgotten books of Eden collection, that in those texts, it talks about the transformation of Adam and Eve's body and how it was that they lost their immortal bright natures, and how the initial eating of the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was their desire to be as God themselves. And that once they lost their immortality, their bright natures, and they were banished here to the earth, the fulfillment of the prophecies of Genesis 3 would take place. It would be once they were in flesh form that Eve would be beguiled and impregnated with Cain. Adam would have to work the soil, and that there would be enmity placed between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. That those consequences would take place after their transformation, and that the fall, which occurred on the sixth day, their bodies were transformed on the eighth day, and that the seventh day, a day of rest, the Sabbath, they were allowed to enjoy, their what would be the fall from their nature for that day, and then after, on the eighth day, their bodies would be changed into that of the flesh form, and they would be imprisoned here upon the earth. And this particular text, as well as that from the first book of Adam and Eve, it talks about all of the consequences of that transformation. And I emphasize all of those transformations in my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, when I talk about how initially they didn't know how to walk, and that prior they would float in their etheric form, in their spiritual form. They didn't have to walk or to use steps to move and to transport themselves, and that afterwards that, drinking water and eating fruit like figs, that all of that, they had never experienced any of that as well. They had never experienced the darkness of night. They never even experienced the heat of sunshine, and did not, when in the book, the first book of Adam and Eve, it talks about how they thought that the sun was a giant monster that was coming to consume them. And we're going to get to some of that here in this particular text as well. But wanted to real quick bring up one particular passage from the Kitab al-Majali, which, for those that don't know, it's called the Book of Rolls. It's part of the text from the ancient fathers, the forefathers of the ancient church, the first church. But I just want to share one passage, because this will give you insight into what I'm talking about as well. Because when Adam and Eve were first created, they were placed in paradise. They were not here yet banished here to the earth. And it was from paradise that they had fallen and been exiled from. And that place of paradise is where Adam and all the other patriarchs, including the thief that died on the cross with Christ, are now. And that during the first resurrection, they were taken to paradise and re-entered into the city of God, New Jerusalem. So, real quick, I wanted to share this particular passage. But the cursed devil, when he entered the serpent, came towards Eve when she was alone in paradise away from Adam, and called her by her name. She turned to him and looked at her likeness behind a veil. And he talked to her, and she talked to him, and he led her astray by his speech. And he lectured her about the forbidden tree in obedience to her desire, and described to her the goodness of its taste, and that when she should eat of it, she should become a god. And she longed for what the cursed one made her long for, and she would not hear from the Lord. May his name be sanctified. What he had commanded Adam about the tree, she hastened eagerly towards it and seized some of its fruit in her mouth. And then she called Adam, and he hastened to her, and she gave him of the fruit, telling him that if he ate of it, he would become a god. He listened to her advice because he should become a god, as she said. And when he and she ate the deadly fruit, they were bereft of their glory, and their splendor was taken from them, and they were stripped of the light with which they had been clothed. And when they looked at themselves, they were naked of the grace which they had worn, and their shame was manifest to them. They made to themselves aprons of fig leaves, and covered themselves therewith, and they were in great sadness for 3 hours. They did not manage to continue in the grace and the power with which the Lord had endued them before their rebellion for 3 hours, till it was taken from them, and they were made to slip and fall down at the time of sunset on that day. And they received the sentence of God in punishment. After the clothing of fig leaves, they put on clothing of skins, and that is the skin of which our bodies are made, being of the family of man, and it is a clothing of pain. All right, I'm not going to continue on with that, but you get the idea. If you want to read this story for yourself, I'll post it in the chat room. It's very interesting text. It's called the Kitab al-Majali. And it basically tells you, as I told you, that Adam and Eve were created in paradise, were made, in an immortal and bright nature before they fell from grace, and that they didn't take on the flesh form until after their exile and after their fall. All right, continuing. Afterwards, Adam did not want to enter the cave either, but he bowed before God's instructions and said to himself, "If I don't go into the cave, I will break again God's law." And then Atam and Eua entered the cave and started to pray in their own language, not known today for the most of the people who once knew it well. And when they prayed, Adam looked up and saw the rocky ceiling in the vault of the cave, which covered their new home. It covered it in such a way that they couldn't see the heaven, neither could they see God's creations. Because of that, Adam cried and hit himself on the chest. Wanted to let people know again, because the individual that translated this particular text and made it available to me. That his English is not his first language, so you will see some mistakes as we go through the text, and I'm actually trying to correct them as we go through too. And he hit himself on the chest very hard till he fell down to the earth and looked as if he was dead. And Eua sat down and cried over Adam because she thought that he was dead. Afterwards, Eua stood up and raised her hands towards God and begged him for mercy and said, "Oh my God, forgive me for my sin that I committed, and do not remember it any longer. Because it is I who is responsible for your servant to be banned from the garden, who now is miserable and devastated because of me, transformed from light to darkness, and from being happy, now put in this prison. Oh God, look at this fallen servant of yours and make him alive again, so he may cry and regret his sin, which he committed because of me. Don't take yet his soul, but let him live, so his punishment will be measured accordingly to his sin, and so he may do your will before he dies. But if you won't make Adam alive, God, then take my soul, so I can be like him, and do not leave me alone in this darkness, because I cannot live alone in this world, only together with him." Because you, God, made Adam asleep so you could create me from his rib, and afterwards restored it afterwards through your divine power, and you took me, his rib, and made me to be his woman, bright as him, with a heart, mind, and speech, and in a body like his. You made me to his image through your mercy and power. Oh my God, he and I, we are one. And you, God, are our creator. You created both of us in the same day. That's why, God, give him life so he may be together with me in this foreign land till we die because of our sin. But if you won't make him alive, take me also as you took him, so we may die in the same day. And Eua cried bitterly and fell down over our forefather Adam, because her grief was so huge. Chapter 11. And God looked at them because they were like dead by this huge grief. And so God wanted to raise them up on their feet and comfort them. He sent his word to Adam and Eua so they might rise immediately. And God said to Adam and Eua, "You committed sin by your own will, without taking into consideration my absolute will and foreknowledge. That is why you came out of the garden in which I put you in the beginning. Because of your unnatural desire for divinity, power, and a magnifying state such as mine, you have committed a crime through your own will, which puts you in an unnatural state by losing the light character which you had before. And see, now you came out from the garden to this uncultivated land, full with difficulties. You shouldn't break my law, and you should have obeyed me. You shouldn't eat fruit from the tree, as I also told you not to come near it. And in the garden there were other fruit trees better than this tree. But the bad Satan, who could not keep his initial state and faith, who did not have towards me, despite that I created him, contempt me and wanted to steal divinity. Therefore I banned and removed him from heaven and put him down under it. He presented to you this tree, in a way so it would be difficult for you to stand against the temptation. And so you ate from it by listening to him. This way you broke my law, and because of that you encountered now all these difficulties and pain. And you, Eua, who were the crown of the creation, were chosen to receive God's Spirit, so you might give birth to spiritual and heavenly children. You were first to taste from the tree, and when you went into the tree, you grew together with it, so you yourself became as a tree. And from now on, all boughs from Atam which go into the hollowness of your tree, I'm thinking it must be seed. Because they didn't understand what they were saying here. So it must be seed. And so from now on, all the seed from Adam which goes into the hollowness of your tree will be born from it, born in a world of pain and mortality, in which you are now, because through you all will, even the innocent, go into this tree and will taste the fruit from it. And you will be the mother of all living beings, and you will be to them as a tree of life, because they will be born through you. But instead of leading them to the world of the living, you will lead them to the world of the dead, because you didn't thirst for the loving presence of God's Spirit, but gave after to the seduction of the snake. God the Creator, who created my things, did not intend to destroy them, but because of their own crime they destroy themselves accordingly their own will, and they punish and ruin themselves by it. But if they repent and change their hearts and seek sanctity of their own will, choosing God the Spirit's presence, then they will be healed and will be called again God's children. And then will be born a new Eua, who will be incorporated with God's Spirit, who will rest in her, and she will be one with the tree of life. And those who will enter the hollowness of this tree will be born into the world of the living Spirit of God, and will have eternal life, and there will be no longer any grief. So as through one woman all came into the world of the dead, now through another woman all worthy will be able to come into the world of immortality, where God the Lord himself is. But those who, on contrary, will follow the laws of the snake, hardened by its deceptive charm and criminal acts, will be accordingly their free will cursed for eternity, done by their own sins. Chapter 12. I'm going to read just a little bit more, and then I'll check the chat room. And if you have any questions, certainly place them there, and I will answer them. If the chat room scroll pushes your question off of the screen before I can get to it, then just repost it and I'll answer it. Just a few more paragraphs and then I'll get to your questions if you have any. When Atam and Eua heard these words from God, they sobbed and cried even more, but they stabilized their hearts in the name of God, because they felt that God is to them same as father and mother. And because of this feeling, they cried before him and sought for his mercy. And then God was pitiful and said, "Oh, Adam, I made a legacy between me and you, and I will not break it. Neither will I let you come back to the garden till my testament of the 5.5 days will be fulfilled. And then Adam said to God, "Oh my God, you created us in the garden to your image, and before I committed a sin, you made all animals to come to me so I could give them names. Back then your blessing rested upon me, and I gave names to the animals according to your wisdom, and they were all subjected to me. But now, Lord God, when I broke your laws, all animals rise against me and will swallow me and your servant Eua as well, and the animals will kill us." That is why I beg you, O God, after you banned us from the garden and led us to unknown lands, to protect us from the animals so they might not harm us. And when God heard what Adam said, he was pitiful towards them. And he knew that Adam is right when he says that the animals would rise against them and would swallow them. Atam and Eua, since God was angry with them for committing a sin. And then God said to Adam to call again all the animals by their names. And God gave an order to everything that moves on the face of the earth to come to Adam and present itself by their names. After they presented themselves, God told them not to bother Atam and Eua and his righteous future descendants. After that, all the animals honored Adam and subjected to him by their names, accordingly God's order. For an exception was the snake, because God was enraged with it. The snake did not come to Adam together with the rest of the animals. Chapter 13. All right, let me check the chat room here real quick. And for those that are just now coming to the chat room, I am reading, this is the second part of the book of Atam and Eua, a Thracian text that goes back to 5500 BC, predating the Sumerian culture, and that they were very ancient Christians that knew about what would be the fulfillment of the prophecy which is laid out in this text of Christ coming into the flesh 5,500 years after the banishment of Adam. And in the next show, I will open with that prophecy, and I'll tell you how it was fulfilled, because this particular prophecy is also revealed in other aspects of other pseudepigraphal and apocryphal texts. And one of those that I will be talking about specifically is the Gospel of Nicodemus. Actually, Jazz is talking about that. Somewhat, you made a comment about that particular text. I'm not exactly sure what y'all are talking about. Let me see if I can make sense of this. Okay, I'm not understanding the question, but I'll check again here in a minute, Jazz, in about 15 minutes. Just post it again, because I'm not understanding the question or your dialogue between Miss W and you as to the reference as far as the Gospel of Nicodemus. But anyways, the Gospel of Nicodemus does, in detail, break down how Christ was the fulfillment of this particular 5,500 year prophecy, and also how the Ark of the Covenant, in the way that it was built, it was also prophetically aligned to this particular revelation. And in that particular text, which may, well, no, I'll read it at the beginning of the next show, in the third part on this particular series. All right, continuing, chapter 13. And Adam started to cry and said, "Oh God, when we lived in the garden and when our hearts were upwinged," which I'm not sure if that's right. When our hearts were maybe uplifted, we saw the angels singing in heavens, praising you. And we knew them by their personal names. But now we don't see as before. No, when we went to live in a cave, all of creation became hidden from us. The Lord God said to Adam, when you obeyed me inside you, there was a bright nature, and that is why you were able to see deep things far away. But after you committed sin, this bright nature was withdrawn from you. So now you cannot see things far away, but just those things that are close to you. Your bodies now are capable only of seeing things at close range because they are rough now. The names of my angels are the same as before, and if you call them by their names in my name and in my power, they will come to you and will submit to you like before. So you will not be alone and helpless in the land that you are now. When Adam and Eua heard these words from God, they left and praised God with sorrowful hearts, and God ended his relation or his interaction with Adam. Chapter 14. Afterwards, Adam and Eua came out from the cave of the treasures and approached the door of the garden. They stood there, looked at it, and cried because they were dismissed and could not enter it. And they left the door which leads to the Garden of Eden, located south to the river which watered the garden from the root of the tree of life, and which was divided in 4 rivers. And the river's name was Pison, namely meaning Jesus is the Son of the soul, which now is called Istire. Namely, Jesus is God the Word. And then Adam and Eua came close to the water and looked at it and saw that this water passed through the root of the tree of life placed in the garden. And so Adam started to cry and to sob, and he hit himself on the chest because he was removed from the garden. And so he said to Eua, "Why did you bring to me, to yourself and to our descendant, so much grief and disaster?" And hold on. All right, sorry, I had skipped ahead. And Eua responded, "What did you see, so you cry and speak to me this way?" But Adam said to Eua, "Don't you see this water which was with us in the garden and which watered the trees, the water which runs out from the tree? When we lived in the garden, we did not need to nurse it, but when we came to this unknown land, we started to like this water, which we now use for washing our bodies." And so when Eua heard Adam's words, she started to cry. And because of the bitter lamentation, they fell into the water and were close to drowning in it. They would no longer see the creations, because when they saw the creation, They felt a huge grief and wanted to die. Then God, merciful and just, saw Atam and Eua laying in the water and near death, sent an angel to save them, and the angel took them away from the water and put them on the water side of the river. After that, the angel went back to God and said to him, "O God, your creations passed away." And then God sent his word to Atam and Eua and made them alive. After Adam was made alive again, he said, "O God, when we lived in the garden, we did not need this water, but since we came out to this land, we cannot live without it." And then God said to Atam, "When you were humble and obedient, and when you were a bright angel, you did not know this water. But after you broke my commandment, you cannot live without water, in which you must clean your body, because from now on your body is like the body of the animals, which need water. You must learn about the mystery of the water, so you may have life within you." And when Atam and Eua heard God saying this, they cried bitterly. And Adam begged God to take them back to the garden so they may see it once more. But God said to Adam, "I gave you a promise, and when this promise is fulfilled, I will take you back to Eden, together with all your righteous descendants." And God stopped talking to Adam. Chapter 16. And then Atam and Eua felt that they were burning of thirst, heat, and grief. And so Adam said to Eua, "We will not drink from this water, even if we have to die. Oh, Eua, if we drink and this water will come to our interior body, it will increase our sin and the sins of our descendants." And Atam and Eua moved away from the water and did not drink it at all, but returned to the cave of treasures. In the cave, Adam could not see Eua. He could just hear her making sounds. Neither Eua could see Adam, but only hear him making sounds. And then Atam felt a huge pain and cried. He hit himself on the chest, stood up, and said to Eua, "Where are you?" She replied, "I am here in the darkness." And then Adam said to her, "Do you remember the bright substance that we had when we lived and when we were in Eden? Remember the trees which gave us a shadow in Eden, which when we walked among them? Oh, Eua, remember the time when we lived in Eden where we did not experience night and day. Remember the tree of life from which flew the water and shined on us? Remember, O Eua, the earth in Eden and its brightness? Think about Eden, where there was no darkness. And when we came to this cave of treasures, we were suddenly surrounded by darkness from all sides, since we cannot see each other anymore, and all pleasure of life has disappeared." Chapter 17. Just a few more paragraphs and I'll check the chat room again. Afterwards, Adam hit himself again on the chest. As did Eua. They grieved all night till the daybreak and had a deep sight because of the long night in Mizia. And while Adam hit himself on the chest, he jumped from the high ground of the cave, and because he felt deep sorrow and because of the darkness that surrounded him. Eua heard the noise of Adam when he fell down to the ground and tried to find him by touching the ground with her hands. And when she found him, he was like dead because he did not move. Eua got scared and turned dumb being there beside him. But the merciful Lord saw the death of Adam, and he saw how Eua was scared and became dumb because of the darkness. And God's word came to rescue them by making Adam alive. And he opened up Eua's mouth, so she could speak again. Then Adam stood upright in the cave and said, "O God, why the light has left us and the darkness came upon us? Why did you leave us in this long darkness? Why do you punish us this way?" But God, where was this darkness before it came to us? Because of this we cannot see each other. When we were in Eden, we didn't see darkness, neither did we know what it was. I was not hidden from Eua, and Eua was not hidden from me till now. And now we are so separated from each other. But before I and Eua, we were in such a great brightness, I could see her and she could see me. Now when we came to this cave, we are covered with darkness and got separated by it. I can't see Eua, and she can't see me. Oh God, why do you want to punish us with this darkness? Chapter 18. Afterwards, when God the merciful and pitiful heard Adam's voice, he said to Adam, "Oh Adam, when the angel called Satan Nell, he was obedient and subjugated to me, and upon him rested a bright light. But when he broke my commandment, I took away his bright nature from him, and he turned dark. And when he was in heavens and owned this lightness, he did not know what darkness was. But he committed a sin, and I put him down on the earth, where darkness came upon him. It is the same with you, O Adam. When you were in my Eden and were submissive to me, this bright light also rested upon you. But when I heard about your sin, I took away from you the bright light. Despite of your sin, and because I am merciful, I did not turn you into darkness, but gave you a carnal body, on which I stretched out this skin, so that your body could stand against the cold and the heat. If I chose to be still angry with you, I would exterminate you. And if I would turn you in darkness, it would be the same as killing you. But because I am merciful, I let you live in the body that you have now. O Adam, when you broke my commandment, I banned you from Eden and took you to this land. And I ordered you to live in the cave, so darkness came upon you in the same way as the darkness came upon the fallen angel who broke my commandment. So look, Adam, you are tricked by this night. It will not be eternally, but it will last only around 12 hours. When the night will end, then it will be daylight. So do not sigh and don't be troubled. Don't feel in your heart that this darkness is long or forever. And don't think that I am punishing you with this darkness. Stabilize yourself and don't be scared. This darkness is not a punishment. But look, Adam, I made the day and put a sun in it, so it may give you light, so you and your offspring can do your work. Because I already knew that you would break my commandment and commit a sin and would come to this land. Besides that, I will not force you, nor will I outvoice you, nor will I stop speaking to you. I will not convict you from breaking my commandment, which caused your downfall. Neither I will convict you for losing your bright light and falling into darkness, nor from leaving Eden. Because I created you from the light and I wanted you to have bright children who looked like you. But one day you did not keep and cherish my commandments. When finished, you did not keep and cherish my commandments when I have finished my creations and blessed everything in it. I gave you the order not to eat from the tree, and I knew that Satan, who fooled himself, would lie to you. So through the tree I wanted you to understand not to go near it. And I told you to not eat from it, nor to taste it, nor to sit down under this tree, so you wouldn't fall for its temptations. If I wouldn't speak to you about this tree, Atam, and if I didn't give you an order before you committed sin, then the blame would be on me. Then you would turn against me and judge me for it. But I warned you, and you fell. And so because of that, my creations cannot judge me, and they are alone to blame. And Adam, I made the day for you and your coming children, so you may work during the day. I also made the night so you could rest after work. And so the animals on the fields could search for their food during the night. But now the darkness will disappear, Adam, and soon will come the light of day. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and check the chat room. We're at chapter 19. Alright. Okay, there's conversation going on about pre-existence in the chat room. And yeah, Psalms 82 references that pre-existence. Somebody had also asked me about the cup of forgetfulness. I forget exactly who that was, but if you were the person that had asked me about that question, please send that to me again so that I can cover that on the next show. Because as I spoke about in that one of the Jewish fables on the creation of souls, it talks about our pre-existence and also our being forced to drink from the cup of forgetfulness. In fact, I'm going to play that little tidbit. It's only 3 minutes long, and it will add, I believe, to the discussion at hand. This is from a 4,000-year-old Jewish fable and Hebraic legend that talks about how we, as the angels of God, as the sons of God, were created on the first day, and that our bodies, the bodies that we inhabit now, made on the sixth day, that our spirits are married to our flesh, but that our bodies are, that we are not just our flesh being. And then I'll make final commentary for the rest of the show, and then we'll pick it up next week with chapter 19. All right, I'm going to play this clip real quick.
Unlike the human body, which was created on the sixth day, the soul was created on the first day, before anything else in the world. In that first hour, God created all souls and placed them in the highest heaven, where they remain until called to enter the body chosen for them. When a baby is conceived, Layla, the angel of night, brings the fertilized egg before God, who decides its fate, whether it will be a boy or a girl, rich or poor, strong or weak, beautiful or ugly, fat or thin, wise or foolish. Only one decision does God leave in the hands of the unborn soul, whether it will be righteous or wicked. Then God sends the angels of souls to the highest heaven to bring back the soul destined for that particular body. Always the soul rebels, for compared to the celestial world, the lower world is but a poor place, full of sorrow. But God reprimands the rebellious soul, saying, "Hush, for this is why I created you." And so the soul enters the unborn child and nestles quietly under the mother's breast. The next morning, a second angel carries the soul to paradise, where it sees all the righteous enjoying eternal happiness. If you follow God's Torah and live a worthy life, explains the angel, you will one day join these happy creatures here. But if not, and that night the angel takes the soul to the gates of Gehenna, where it sees the angels of destruction whipping the wicked souls with burning lashes. Such is the fate of those who have devoted their lives to sin and cruelty, the angel says. It is for you to choose for yourself. Between morning and night of that day, the angel reveals to the unborn soul its future life, where it will live, where it will die, and where it will be buried. And then, at the end of the 9 months, the angel announces that it is time for the soul to leave the warm refuge of the womb. "Oh no," cries the soul, "for that will be too much to bear." But the angel quickly silences it. "So God has decreed, against your will you were formed, and against your will you will be born, and against your will one day die. Such is your fate." And with that, the angel strikes the newborn baby under the nose, leaving a small cleft there. Then he extinguishes the light shining above its head, and instantly the soul forgets everything it has learned during the previous 9 months. And then the baby emerges into the world, crying and afraid. Each soul spends the rest of its time on earth recovering all that it once knew.
All right. When I was writing my 7th book, Skyfall, which is focused on our pre-existence, our being predestinated, and how our election determines our circumstances for our coming into the flesh. This is one of the stories that the Most High had led me to in order to confirm the premise of that particular book, which I had started. I introduced this information in both my 4th book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, as well as my 6th book, Sons of God, Who We Are and Why We're Here. And in my 6th book, I began to elaborate upon it a little bit more and to share more sources, scriptural references, and sources from other pseudepigraphal, apocryphal, as well as the Nag Hammadi codices and even the Dead Sea Scrolls, and how this is another one of those secrets that people don't know a whole lot about when they study only the canon, the Old and New Testament, and that the information is there, but the scriptures and the passages that are associated with it as revelation, it does not make sense to certain pastors, preachers, ministers, people of knowledge, and so they don't teach upon it and don't cover it in their, sermons or in their the work when they're writing about their particular books or whatever. Like the whole thing with Jacob, I love, but Esau I hated. How people can't make sense of, and you won't have a preacher or pastor go up to stand before the congregation or go up on like a TBN or some TV show and talk to the entirety of the world and tell them about how it is that the Most High, the Creator of us all, how He's supposed to be a loving and a compassionate God, but that He somehow hated a child before he had ever yet been born and ever had yet even chance to sin. And how all of that just does not make sense unless you understand about our election and how that has part and plays out in our incarnating into flesh form, or that the war in heaven, which is really the original sin, how all in our, who we were and what we did during that time, how that also plays out in who we are born and how we incarnate into flesh for what will be this particular lifetime. And so if you don't understand and you have no idea about pre-existence and predestination, well, certainly it would seem that the Creator, the Most High, the God of us all, is cruel and genocidal. Why would He, just some children and love others? What would be the determining factor? What would justify His stance on that particular issue? I mean, is it all based on randomness? What could justify a supposed compassionate, loving God hating an as yet unborn child? And so this is one of those things that is dependent on understanding what is being referenced in, like, the passage in Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 5, where He says to Jeremiah, the word of the Lord says to Jeremiah, I knew you before you ever entered into the womb of your mother, and I had foreordained you to be a prophet unto the nations. He was part of the elect. And just as there is an elect, there is also a group that is cursed and that is not favored and that has sided against Him during the war in heaven, and that also sides with Satan and the New World Order now. And they do not want mercy. They do not have any compassion for humanity. They are at every turn of the way warring against the seed of the woman, murdering, causing chaos, and are deserving of the judgment that is coming, that will be levied upon them as the tares who will be, preserved for burning. And it's the same thing with the wheat. And so, if you want to know more, just go through the archives and study pre-election, all the shows that I've done on Skyfall, the Angels of Destiny. All of that is covered in the context of what we're talking about now. All right, I'll see you next week, everybody. God bless all, and we'll pick up with the third part in this series and cover the couple forgetfulness and also the prophecy of the 5,500 years. God bless all. Good night. Our life prayers awaken the Spirit who formed creation in every disguise. Dust, friction, the need to experience, created the power of the first orgasm of energy across infinite skies. Light, energy, movement, sound, through infinite time, space. The universe we've come to grace, the great mystery. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is FallenAngels.tv, and it's a Saturday Sabbath broadcast, and I thank you for taking the time to join me in fellowship and to spend this moment of church with me as we honor the Creator and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and regard them in worship and prayerful celebration of life and existence and coming together to share the information that we've all been blessed to come to discernment on. It's another glorious day here upon the planet. In Georgia, it was near almost 70 degrees, I think, upper mid 60s, and just beautiful, calm, blue skies, the gentle zephyrs, and just a glorious day. And I spent the majority of it outside, just in being with the Creator and the creation, and just feeling the warmth of the sunbeams touching me in gentle kindness. There's nothing like, in my opinion, and just being with the giant family. Today is a follow-up. It will be the second in the series on the book of Atam and Eua. And for those that missed the first show, this book is one that was sent to me by a friend of mine, a listener in Bulgaria, who is a researcher in the Thracian mysteries and the culture, the civilization, because they were based in that area, and they are the mother culture of that particular region. And so, in being interested in the ancient mysteries and the ancient past, he became a seeker of knowledge and was introduced to a Dr. Stephen Guide, who has published a number of books which are bilingual, and I'm hoping to get copies of these. I'm not found a website that is in English to where I can actually order them, but he's also translated some ancient texts that were found within that region from this Thracian culture, which predates. A lot of you have heard about the Thracians, which they predated the Sumerians by some 1,000 to 2,000 years. And what is interesting about the knowledge that they have and the information that Dr. Guide shares with us as a world is that they were not pagans, but they were very much Christian oriented, and were followers of the Most High and knowers of the Son, and knew about what would be his later coming into the flesh to die on the cross to then redeem the sins of humanity, and that the promise, there was a prophecy within their culture, of which we've also been reading from in this particular text, that speaks about how the Father would send the Son into flesh form, and that taking on and being incarnated in such a way that he would, in fact, through his life and his example, show to us basically the way home, and that he would be the way and the truth and the light, and that he would defeat death in order to redeem humanity. And so all of these things are found within this particular text. And over the next few weeks, because so many of you are interested in it and it's not available, I'm going to share it with you so that you can be blessed by the information that is found within the context of and the scope of it as a work. And so I've decided to actually dedicate the time to bring it to you in full revelation, whereas a lot of times in the shows that I do on some of these ancient documents, I will just spend one or two shows in order to emphasize what I feel are the most relevant parts, and then allow you to share with you the link and then allow you to read and to study the text for yourself. But because it's not available to you, I think it would be important to cover it if not in its entirety, in most of it. And so that's what we're going to do. But before I continue, hold on, we've got a couple questions. Okay, couple questions from the chat room, people that are hitting me up on instant message, and I will get to that. People that are asking me questions, but also know if you are disrupting the show, that I will not have a problem booting anybody. So please be cordial and to respect and to honor each other in the chat room. With me not being able to focus entirely, I don't want to have to completely monitor. And so if there is somebody that's disrupting, please let me know. All right. All right. Yeah, we had somebody that was disrupting, so I don't want to spend time dealing with that, and so I just booted that individual. But anyways, I'm going to answer a few questions. First, let me answer this instant message from Exit Babylon. He's asking me a question, what is going on with Dr. Joy? Oh, I did answer you, Exit Babylon, but you may not have gotten my message, but I did let you know that Dr. Joy's husband has been going through some difficult times as far as his health, and so they're not exactly sure what his condition is, and so she's been going to a number of specialists and has had to focus on taking care of her husband and has not been able to do a lot of shows. She is going to be joining me November 29th on Revolution Radio on a Wednesday evening, 8 to 10 p.m. And we'll be covering a lot of information, and you're welcome to join us there. If you have any questions, you can ask her directly, or you can email me at zengarcia.com, and I'll be glad to pass those on to her. And also, you can contact her directly. She is taking some time to get back to people because of all that's going on with her life, but she makes it a point to answer everybody that does try to contact her. She's very good about that, and you can so just email her at drjoye, drjoye.com, and she'll catch you up on what's going on with her. But definitely, please do pray for her and her husband, and I hope that life stabilizes for them so that she can continue to bless the world with all her incredible research. Because as for those that do know and have followed the relationship that she and I have had for a long number of years now, she was the first person that was confirming witness to me as to the revelation of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, and that she also was led in discernment in that way, and writes about it and has covered it in great, and also on the various programs and the things that she's written about. In fact, the third book of her Beguiled series, of which we will be covering on November 29th, is focused on the metaphor of the symbology of the garden parable and Eve having eaten from the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and how the consequences of her having eaten of that fruit do not make sense unless you understand that the metaphor for the garden parable, that there's a sexual connotation associated to that revelation. And I'm sure she'll talk about